Aloha Mavericks from all around the world. My name's Mike Kelly and I'm super excited to bring you yet another episode of Unmapped, a podcast exploring the world through the eyes of remarkable humans on extraordinary journeys. I hang out with pioneers, adventurers and trailblazers from around the planet, hearing their stories and unlocking the lessons learned from a life on and off the beaten path. And just a little bit of housekeeping, if you're enjoying the show, please consider sharing it with your friends, following and reviewing us wherever you listen to it, and check us out on Instagram at UnmappedPod. It would mean the absolute world, and I guess you get to come and hang out, which could be fun. All right, let's get into the show. On this episode of Unmapped, we speak with Nikki Tugano, the founder and CEO of SeenCulture. SeenCulture is a HR tech startup on a mission to shine a light on untapped potential in service of their vision to create a world where everyone feels seen. I really enjoyed this conversation with Nikki. We were able to go deep on topics pertaining to human potential. Nikki is an expert in organizational culture and positive psychology, and so we go deep on what a thriving human being looks and feels like and how the shape of their environment plays a role in facilitating their flourishing. We also explore the motivation for SeenCulture. Being seen. As a brown woman from a low socioeconomic area, a part of Nikki's journey has been grappling with not being seen and how a system full of well-intentioned people still seems to be lagging on supporting people of underrepresented groups. Nikki brings a clarity and considered poise to these issues and speaks openly and vulnerably about the realities of startup life. I'm honored to bring you this authentic and real conversation. So folks, here she is, Nikki Tugano. Nikki, hey, how you doing? How are you in the soul? Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
What's been happening? Have you how have you been in the soul?
In the soul, oh, that's a really deep one. I don't often get asked that question. What's been happening? I've been doing pretty good despite certain circumstances and challenges, and I'm not afraid to go into that, but I've been pretty good. I've been struggling a little bit in terms of just getting across all the things because there's so much I want to do. It's just working out which are the things that are the most high value, which don't always align with what's also the most energizing.
Tell me a little bit more about that. There's a lot there for a first kind of statement. Like that was a lot more than I thought I'd get out of how are you. I thought I was going to get the typical, yeah, I'm good, life's great, crushing my startup, yada yada yada. But that was definitely not it. So tell me more about all the things you want to do and how you're going through this decision making process around what's high value.
Yeah. I try to make a point of actually providing authentic answers when people ask me how I'm doing. I think more often than not, the person regrets asking me because we end up going down a rabbit hole and they're like, I really just wanted to clear the objectives of this meeting. But anyway, back to my point. What are all the things at play? I guess for me, I've got the startup that I'm building. So that's, super fun and exciting. Quite a lot of the focus at the moment has been on the capital raise, which I actually enjoy the process for the most part. And I've certainly built up a lot of resilience in, the feedback that you get and the knockbacks and stuff. But for the most part, a lot of the rationale behind potential no's, I can see their point of view. So it's not too debilitating from a from a personal standpoint, which is good. They're never telling me I'm a horrible person. So I guess that's something. But over and above that, I guess we're close to bringing our MVP to market. We've been using our MVP with existing customers, which is amazing, but where we want to share the love more broadly. So we're excited for that, but getting prepped for that is also put a bit of pressure on the team. And then it's like balancing all of that with we're trying to maintain a personal life and also honor the time and space that's needed for your own personal well-being. I think just in the last few weeks has been a bit more of a struggle than it normally is.
That is a very honest and vulnerable answer. I really appreciate that. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we can go into about the cap raise, and I mean, it's amazing that you found it like a positive experience, because there's not many people I speak to that feel like it's a, yes, I can't wait to go into work every day and get rejected by everyone while I scrap around for money. So I love that you are enjoying that process, and I love that you can see the resilience that it's building in you. We'll get to a little bit more of the detail of that later, but that second part that you were talking about, being able to balance the personal and the professional, particularly when you're running a startup. I mean, it's such a common thing. I guess, like when I studied entrepreneurship as my major at uni, and when you're kind of in the throes in the early days of trying to build a startup, it's often, at least back then, it was just accepted that you would have to sacrifice your personal life. You would kind of like family for you wouldn't be able to socialize, you wouldn't see your family as much, and you kind of just need to be okay with that. Have you found that the culture around that idea in an entrepreneurial setting has changed? It sounds like you're very focused, at least, on trying to create a balance there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to say whether it's changed or not, because obviously I can only speak to my experience, being in the thick of the startup space just in the last several months or so. So I'm not sure how bad it was before. But for me, it seems to be quite accepting that balance in general is a challenge as an entrepreneur, and being intentional about looking after your well-being and mental health and personal life is actually quite key to helping drive success, when often at times it feels like it's more of a distraction than anything. But that's something that I've struggled to get the right balance with, because I'm like, oh, I don't have time to see friends or to do this and that. But when you take a step back, you actually realize how important it is to make sure that you make that time and are intentional about like boundaries around headspace that take you away from your mind being on about work.
It's really important, I find, particularly when you are the founder or the CEO, because you drive culture, and it's so important that you're able to bring your best self to work every single day. And another thing that just popped up into my mind then is it's just this fascinating thing. And I feel like I have noticed health becoming a more and more important consideration in the startup world, but it's almost for the purpose so you can be more efficient and effective with whatever project that you're working on. And I wonder if that is the right way to think about it, but it maybe is the only way to think about it. If you're starting a business, particularly if you're doing what you're doing, going to raise money from VCs and things like that, like you're taking in people's kind of money, they're trusting you to, get up every single day and do the best that you can with, like the resources that they're providing you. And so to not make your entire life geared around turning the wheels of this business almost feels wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to make sure that, people start to, I guess, reorient the importance of the other stuff outside of work in terms of how it contributes to performance.
And also how your work that you do within your business hours as an entrepreneur contributes to your overall well-being too. I mean, we don't we don't get into starting our own projects, for sanity, put it that way. There's something deeper that drives anyone to decide to commit, sort of like 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, or, however much time that they're putting towards something. And, at least 24 hours a day worth of headspace too, even in my dreams. Like I literally dream about this podcast. It's just manic. And how much that it can contribute to our well-being, because we feel like we're on some form of, I guess, passion and path that we are supposed to be. And so I think flipping that narrative can also be really helpful, and understanding that you're probably actually happier doing this than you are doing anything else. It just so happens that when you're in the grind of it and it's really hard, it doesn't feel like that. And you also need to have really great self-care rituals around the work that you're doing to bring your best self and be able to turn up every single day and drive your passion forward, often in the face of a lot of obstacles.
Yeah, absolutely. It lends to, I mean, I've had the benefit of being able to go really deep into like the science of well-being and its impact on performance. And I mean, maybe it's a good segue to start talking about that, but that's, I guess, in large part why, I'm so in the space in terms of I'm happy to carry the good and the bad in service of recognizing the overarching sort of goal that we're all working toward. And a big part of what we do at SeenCulture is really highlight the impact of why well-being of individuals is so important for success, but also uncovering the elements that contribute most to that. And so I actually used to teach the science of well-being, motivation, and performance at Melbourne University. And in general, actually, it's called positive psychology is the topic, where traditional psychology tends to focus a little bit more on, I guess, the science or pathology of what's wrong with people, whereas I'm really interested in the opposite. What is it about people that makes them exceptional and, really great at what they do, flourishing in their lives across all areas of their, of their life, and what is it about them and the environments that they're a part of that contribute to that. And that's always been like one of the most, if not the most, fascinating topic for me.
So what is it? Tell me the answer. Give me the golden ticket, Nikki.
Okay. Well, if I had my researcher hat on, one of the main theories behind positive psychology is so Martin Seligman. He's the father of positive psychology, and he's created this framework, this well-being framework that's called PERMA. So PERMA, and there's a recent development that has added a H on the end. And so these 5 or 6 factors or dimensions are the key elements that contribute most to well-being or positive psychology. And so P stands for positive emotions. E is for engagement. R is for relationships. M is for meaning or purpose. A is for accomplishment. And then H is for health.
Keep going. Deeper.
Okay, and the idea is that there's actually profilers out there that measures this. There's a PERMA profiler, and if you rate high on each of these 6 elements, then you're deemed to have high well-being and therefore are flourishing according to their framework. For me, a big part of the things that I really like to focus in on is what are the factors that contribute most to our psychological well-being, and in particular because of the field that I come from, which is in organizational development and HR, human performance and human potential. I'm really fascinated by motivational psychology in particular, or performance psychology, and what are the things that like intrinsically motivate us to be driven rather than the extrinsic factors. And in the workplace, what extrinsically motivates us is money. Or the traditional sentiment around work is that we go to work to get paid a salary, and therefore, work is an exchange of labor for pay. Of course, now that things have evolved, that was I guess the premise of work centuries ago. We're now in this modern day and age that actually, we've got evolved and heightened needs at work that extend beyond just pay. Work is now, a source of self-fulfillment. It's a source of connection. It's a source of structure. It's a source of autonomy, like all of these things that actually really help aid and impact our overall life experience and life satisfaction. And so I really personally consider it as to be an incredible platform to make a real difference in people's lives.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, work has to be that in this day and age, because it is such an important and massive part of how we spend our lives. Like, I mean, it's a crazy amount of time when you think about if you are spending 8 to 10 hours a day at the office or commuting to the office, or, the work site or wherever you're working. It's so important that you actually enjoy it. I actually had a question fling to my mind then.
Yeah.
Would this be an intrinsic or an extrinsic motivation? So rather than necessarily for me, it, like, obviously the things that I choose to do in my life are very intrinsically driven. I do not get paid a cent for this podcast, and I won't for a while. And so I know that I'm very intrinsically motivated when I'm doing things like this. However, when I'm at a workplace, rather than the money, what I really look for is being inspired by the other people around me. And if I feel like I'm in a great situation or a great work environment where I'm around people that really kind of like bring me up and make me happy and inspire me to do better work, that's generally when I'm most happy in a workplace. Because that's people outside of me, is that extrinsic, or is it intrinsic in the sense that I know that I'm best serving the people around me when I'm inspired, and therefore if I put myself around the right people, it feels kind of intrinsic in a way, but it is extrinsic. Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from and why it can seem confusing. It's intrinsic motivation. So there's this concept that's called self-determination theory, and it's basically the theory of intrinsic motivation, which they would argue you can drill down to three factors: connection to people, to purpose, to values. So that social connection piece is one of the key things, and I think that's what you're talking to here.
Yeah.
The next one is autonomy, like feeling like you have a sense of agency and choice over what you do. And so some people might think of this as if they have flexibility at work, for instance. Or flexibility or autonomy to choose the way in which they do their work, and those sorts of things. And then the last one is, it's been termed a couple of different ways, but basically it's the opportunity to play to your strengths. Like, are you competent at what you do? Is there room to grow? And do you see, career progression, for instance? And so that all being lumped in one category. So connection, autonomy, and growth. You nail those three things in any work environment that you're in, then you're highly likely going to be a very satisfied worker.
And so that is inherently intrinsic. They are like kind of intrinsic motivators. Like, I know I get growth and autonomy. They come from the inside, and they need to be provided for you extrinsically for you to, I guess, self-actualize within the workplace. I didn't think of the connection piece. It's always felt extrinsic to me, because it's like, if the right people are around me, then I'm going to work well. Whereas it's interesting, as you were kind of describing what positive psychology was, it felt like it was actually more of an intrinsic sort of like motivator for me, but it only shows itself in my performance if I'm around the right people, because I need that connection piece.
Absolutely. And the reason why that connection piece, like connection to other people, is intrinsically motivating is because what it's fueling is your sense of belonging. And that's at the essence of that particular piece. Yeah.
True. That's a really good little insight. I mean, a sense of belonging is, I mean, kind of almost critical to the human experience, isn't it?
Totally. Totally.
How do you so let's bring this to the founder perspective. I have been thinking a a lot lately about the qualities required to be a founder. As someone who went to uni, kind of knew from a very early age that one, I was highly unemployable, and two, that I would really, like I wanted to create something in the world that was kind of novel and new and provided, something in people's lives that, like brought happiness to their day or brought value to their lives. I have been on that path for 10 years with like a lot of failure in that piece, and most like kind of notably a massive kind of challenge through COVID with the travel business that I was running. And it's got me thinking a lot about this notion that has been peddled a lot in the last 10 years, that anyone can be a founder, anyone can be an entrepreneur, like just find your thing, anyone can do it. And I just like I don't like to be honest, I'm not sure if I'm cut out for a tech startup, like after having done it a lot. And I think probably the reason for that is I was always trying to build $1 billion business, and I don't actually care about money, so like I was probably the wrong value match for me. But it really takes something to be a founder, and it takes something in terms of your aptitude, it takes something in terms of your attitude, it takes something in terms of your resilience, your ability to like just keep getting up and turning up with a fresh mind, putting your best foot forward every day, making the right decisions, like critically almost every single day in the early stages, and particularly a scale up for a start, like a scale up, the pressure is massive of making the right decisions there, because you're playing with a lot of different resources. You have to think about many different things at once and make the right decisions to, kind of either grow or die. Do you think, from your perspective as both a founder and not necessarily having got to the scale up part of that yet, but as a founder and also someone who's come from a professional HR background in positive psychology and high performance, like, what do you think the most important qualities and traits a founder can have, and do you think anyone can do it?
No, I don't think anyone can do it. I think you have to have
it's a very unpopular opinion you've got there.
I know. I think people can learn to be entrepreneurial, but so much of it is also driven by an innate conviction that, comes from something that's like really burning inside them. For instance, like, a chip on your shoulder about whatever it might be, like drives conviction to the point where you are just relentless and tenacious in your, in your approach to making something happen. And it's those sorts of things that really fuel the drive behind what it means to be an entrepreneur or a successful entrepreneur. And so for me, like, I think the other element, beyond obviously you have to have some level of intelligence, not only in terms of IQ, but like in terms of emotional intelligence, because so much of it is around how you navigate and leverage relationships in this space. And so that needs to be there, but then the ability to also, understand how differing sort of resources can really help you, not just in terms of who you know, but also what you know. What are the things you can leverage in terms of macro factors, for instance, in the environment, or the landscape in terms of, what are things looking like in with certain social trends or environmental trends, whatever they might be. But your capacity to be able to hold that in mind and then execute against something that's really going to be able to penetrate through all the noise in and over above what anyone else might be able to do. Like, that's the thing, whilst also having a super high risk tolerance, right? Because you're putting so much up for grabs in terms of your own finances, your own personal well-being, your own physical health, like all of these things. You have to really be willing to put them into question in service of this incredible idea that you have that you're trying to put out there, or this impact you're trying to make. And so I don't think that's for everyone. There's a lot of people in this world, and I don't blame them, that would prefer a comfortable life. And being a founder is anything but comfortable.
When a would-be founder, if a would-be founder came to you and asked you how they would know if they should pursue an idea that they've been thinking about, what is the advice that you would give them?
I would basically test them on how much, they've done to really validate their own assumptions around that idea being something promising, because everyone's got a different sort of aptitude for what's enough and what's not enough, right? And it's like, and I thought that my idea was enough ages ago, and it just wasn't. It's taken time, and then I've realized how I've needed to change things around the strategy or the positioning or whatever for it to be right. In particular, like not just right in terms of it being a good idea, but right in terms of timing, because especially if you're raising capital with investors, that's a big question that needs to be addressed. The why now question, for them to have that conviction to invest in you, not in general, but like at that point in time when you need it on your timeline.
Yeah, that is. I mean, there's a lot of things that there's just so much that needs to go right, isn't it? It's oh man, and it's not only just the idea of needing to test your assumptions, because I think that what has been the predominant narrative, more like probably more at a macro scale around starting a business, whether it be like a small e-commerce site, whether it be a podcast, whether it be a tech startup, has been that, if you're passionate about it and you just do it for long enough, it will work. And particularly if you're kind of getting into the more granular sort of trying to build a scalable tech startup, it's like, that's not like that is like the fundamental piece of the puzzle that needs to come at the bottom. Like if you don't have that, like this absolutely needs to happen in the world, and if it doesn't, then like I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, so I better go and start that thing. That is absolutely critical to to be able to get up in the morning when everything's going wrong, to sort of like pushing through, to handling the rejections from the VCs, which you will get 99% of the time. But on top of that, you then also need to be, like you said, wise enough to understand the market that you're going into well enough. You need to be like kind of emotionally adept enough and agile enough to be able to like kind of leverage relationships and like kind of the environment around you and kind of people around you, but also without it being transactional at all. It's like kind of you have nothing to offer people because you're a startup. What are you going to offer them? But then also you are wanting to build genuine relational relationships and inspire people to help you. But at the same time, like you have nothing to offer. It's like it kind of like everywhere you turn, it just looks like a dead end, and you just kind of have to get really good at building ladders and digging holes and like barging through brick walls and stuff like that. It is, and that is not just about passion. Passion will get you running at that brick wall over and over and over and over again, thinking and hoping that like this time is the time that it's going to break, like, or like thinking that like maybe if I just get a trampoline I can jump over. But it's the way that you like look at the brick wall and go, okay, so I think if I run into that brick wall at this angle from this pace at this speed, then it's going to break. Or it's like, okay, if I make a trampoline this big and have this many springs and I jump from this angle and do like a triple backward somersault 180, then I'll get over it. Like you require a lot of like, there's a lot of aptitude, I think I used the word before, required to be able to do it as well. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. I heard the other day, actually, someone said something which I thought really resonated, but it was basically do what you can to break your idea every day. And if you still can't do it, then you've got something, right? So you have to have this like really strong conviction and curiosity to be like, okay, I know that I've got this idea. I can see all the reasons why it could be good. And, you know, we always confirmation bias, right? So we'll always try and look for any of the factors that will contribute to our idea being successful. But what we don't tend to do is look for the alternative, right? What are all of the ways in which we could potentially be challenged on this? And you need just as much interest and conviction to understand that, to know if it's really going to succeed.
You probably need more. Like the resilience you require to every single day look at your idea and go, why is this not going to work? Why is this going to fail? That takes a lot.
Yeah. Whilst maintaining like a heavy set of optimism at the same time.
Oh man, why does anyone do this? I just don't get it.
No.
Yet here we are. So sticking with the idea of being able to hold failure in your hand whilst maintaining a heavy sense of optimism, I'm going to paint you a picture right now. So you're slogging it out, and you just have one of those days where nothing goes right. Like you just don't, you know the days I'm talking about, where it just feels like it literally feels like from the moment you wake up to the moment you put your head to the pillow, feels like the entire universe is bearing down on you, and the devil has raised hell specifically to mess with you. And you get through that day, and you put your head on the pillow, you go to sleep, you wake up, you immediately after waking up do all of your like positive psychology kind of tools and tips and like everything in your toolbox to sort of go, okay, like reset, today's going to be a good day. And then the same thing happens again, and then it happens again, and all of a sudden, before you can even breathe, you've gone through 2 weeks of just absolute like soul crushing body blows, and you're just gasping for air. Like you just everything feels like it's falling apart. And this is not I don't think I've ever met an entrepreneur who hasn't had like a prolonged period of this kind of feeling. What do you do?
What do you do? I mean, you come back
like,
to
what do you do? But specifically, like, what do you do? Like, what would you do in that?
Do? Okay. I've been, you know, there's been times when I felt like super defeated, and I'm like, oh my God, is this, you know, is this worth it? And where my mind typically goes to when I really need to pull myself out of it, and sometimes it's not me doing this self-talk, it's someone else saying it to me, like someone close to me, is that it goes beyond, you know, you as an individual, me as a person. It's like, well, for instance, at SeenCulture, our vision is to create a world where everyone feels seen. And if I'm the person that's a catalyst for making that happen, then I cannot not do what I'm doing, right? Like, it's maybe I'm having a hard day or a hard month, but so what? The payoff of being able to contribute to such a vision is really what matters. And so it comes back down to purpose, to meaning, to the whole reason as to why you started in the first place. But you need those, you need those things to remind you that that's still there, because it can be really hard to forget when you get bogged down in all of the problems that keep coming up, all of the complaints, all of the issues. And so it's important to not only, you know, I guess I don't know what it is, creating artifacts around to remind you what that is, but also leaning on your team or, you know, your close friends and family to remind you that that's why you're doing it. And then twofold to that, like, I think that's the crux of, I think, what matters when it comes to what it takes to get you out of that slump. It's reminding yourself to celebrate, you know, the small wins along the way, because more often than not, although it just seems like everything's gone to shit, like there's usually at least some things you can be grateful for. Whether it's just like, oh, you know what, I had a bit of a shit day, but it was really nice that I still have this good relationship with, I don't know, a potential customer or partner, despite everything that's going on. Like, you know, and like just being able to like recognize and reflect on what those moments are that you can be grateful for, and yeah, remind yourself that if you're a founder or an entrepreneur, you're probably in a pretty privileged position, and so it can't
Yeah.
be too hard for you to find those things, you know.
That's true. Very, very, very true. The last part, actually, that was a really great answer. Like being able to, the purpose piece almost needs to be paramount at that point in time, right? Like if you are getting up in the morning and you're not super deeply connected to the purpose for which you're creating this project, then you're not like you're going to give at some point. You're going to give up, right? Like it's just not worth it. It's not worth the beatings, the punishment, the pain, the
Mm-hmm.
like the tears. It's like it's really not worth it. And so the only thing that will keep me going at that point is a strong sense of, almost an insane sense of purpose towards what you're doing, and then understanding, I guess, and being maybe mindful around the artifacts or the things that can remind you of that, and being
Mm-hmm.
intentional about ensuring that those things are in your life in some way, shape, or form. And then that
Yeah.
last part that you mentioned, the privilege is very, I mean, it's probably either end of the spectrum, right? Like you're either in a position where you can afford to create space for yourself to start something like this, or you are so far back against the wall that you have no option but to just fight your way out and create something for yourself. Like for instance, I'm thinking of, the necessity based migrant entrepreneurs that, like have created so many foundations for themselves in different cities in Australia or around the world. And a lot of the time they don't speak English, and they
Mm-hmm.
have, like had no opportunity to join the workforce in Australia. So it's literally sink or swim. And so
Mm-hmm.
maybe, and at that point, again, it comes back to the purpose thing. It's like, I got to eat. So it's like, it really ends up being about purpose. And then for the lucky ones like us, it also becomes a matter of, can you be grateful for even the opportunity to get out of bed during the day and actually work on something that you're really passionate about? I mean, that's really special when you think about it. Like, there's a lot of
Absolutely.
people in the world that just don't have that opportunity, right?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely.
What about the high points? Do
What
you
are the
do
high
anything
points?
specific to deal with, not deal with, but stay focused with the, like when you hit a high point in the journey? I actually remember listening to a podcast that Jesse Itzler did a few years ago. I think it was with Aubrey Marcus, and he spoke about the first time he ever made a big break with one of his projects. He kind of just like celebrated a little bit too hard, and then before he like could kind of like rewrite the ship, like the opportunity had sort of like passed him by. Like momentum is a fickle thing, right? And so one of the things that he said he learned was that, if you make a break, like it's put your foot on the gas sort of thing. Like don't stop there. Like don't let yourself slack off, get complacent, take a break. Like don't think because you've had one win, you're just now going to get a tsunami of wins kind of following you everywhere you go. As soon as you open your mouth, it's like that's the time to like, that's a little crack of an opportunity, and you got to go for it at that point in time. Like, is there any way, or like, tell me about a win to start with, and it sounds like you got a big one coming up with the launch of your MVP, and how you would or have sort of capitalized on that.
Yeah, a win. You know what's interesting? When you said like what about the high points, I was like, oh, those exist? No, they do.
Oh
Um,
God.
They do. This is what I mean by like speaking from a place of privilege sometimes, and I say that lightly. To be fair, I'm not the most privileged person for a number of different reasons, but um, in terms of where I'm at and the exposure that you know I've gotten as the founder of SeenCulture, that's been going really well, and. Uh, and I actually I've been quite conscious of this because I do like to share the things that I want to celebrate or the wins that we have when they're appropriate. And I guess one thing that went really well for me actually was doing a pitch roadshow. That was really effective in getting exposure in front of the right people. And I did that earlier in the year, which was such a good sort of launch pad for then the capital raise and like starting that process because investors start to know who I am, or not just investors, but in general, the startup community starts to know who I am, and like, and each thing after another really helps build momentum in a way. And I think ultimately that's in large part what's led me to a lot of opportunities, particularly in the PR space, this podcast included, that's gotten me that opportunity to be seen, which hopefully most people will know that's an important thing for me because I know a little bit too much of what it's like not to feel seen. And so when you finally do, you might not have everything sorted out, but when you finally do, that's so satisfying. Like you can see that you're making this progress, but other people can too. And people that matter to you can too. And it's the best thing when you can make other people proud. Like, that's probably one of the big highlights for me.
How do you feel when you say that?
Yeah,
because you just got a massive, you got the biggest smile across your face just then, like your heart just exploded.
Yeah, it feels really cool. It just makes it worth it. Like, yeah, it I don't know. I have no words now. um, but it's a really cool feeling. I have the luxury of knowing how it feels. Not everyone does, but I want to give people that opportunity. And that's why I've created SeenCulture.
100%. And also for a podcast, this is a celebration of having no words because it means you're in your body and having an experience. So I'm all for being lost for words, and I don't mind sitting in silence if you don't know quite what to say. But let's go to where you've alluded to. So SeenCulture is a diversity, equality, or like equality / equity and inclusion play in the corporate sphere, and you are a brown woman starting this organization. And I want to give this as much air and oxygen as you want to give it. But I think that when we're talking about how it feels to not be seen and how it feels to be to struggle regardless of like what you do in your life to be recognized for what you do and things like that, a massive part of this within community is that element of ensuring that we are giving space and air and oxygen to people from all different places, of all different colors, of all different kind of sexualities and things like that. And I mean, I know as well, we haven't spoken about it, but like also you're from the same area I am, which is quite a low socioeconomic area. And so I wanted to give you not a platform. It's not a platform. It's not giving you a platform. That's actually not the right way of saying it. But I did have a question regarding this, and that question was around the bottleneck that I feel we are getting to, and you alluded to the fact that you've been being seen for what you're doing. You've been getting a lot of like great PR. You've been like every single time I go onto LinkedIn, I swear I'm seeing a new post that you're ending up like into this amazing new program, or you've pitched at this event and you won, or like you're getting like people are seeing what you're doing and loving what you're doing. And yeah, you say you're still in the midst of a capital raise, which means it's not translating into cold hard cash. And there could be a number of different factors for that. I'm not insinuating that it's like any of the above kind of diversity based factors, but it seems like, and from speaking with VCs and like friends who work in VCs, and also listening to VCs speak at different conferences, like, I mean, I definitely heard this at Southstart. It sounds like VCs are desperate, like literally desperate for like great businesses and great projects that are being founded by, like women or people of color, or even people of like neurodiverse backgrounds and things like that. Yet the gender, particularly like the statistics for like the gender investment gap, is just wild. Like people are more like people seem to really want to kind of celebrate startups being created by founders from like diverse backgrounds, including women, but yet like is the like somewhere along that line, regardless of the VCs wanting to like right that ship, it just doesn't seem to be happening. Like you're in the middle, like literally in the middle of that process. What's like, I mean, that there's a lot of jibber jabber going on there. So, I mean, there's not really even a question, but I'm just going to stop talking and let you riff on my waffle.
Yeah. There is a lot of pressure, I think it is, for VCs to be giving underrepresented founders a bit more of a fair go. I think that they probably, like, no one's intentionally trying to give less investment to female founders or underrepresented founders in general. But I think there's still quite a lot of bias at play happening, like unconscious bias happening. And like, think of this whole concept of, for me, right, of the importance of feeling seen and what the potential consequences are when you're not. For me in particular, or for our business, a big part of the problem that we're trying to solve is the increasing turnover trend. Employees are leaving their jobs because they don't feel seen, they don't feel recognized, they don't feel valued for their strengths and their potential. And so they want to be somewhere where they can be, simple as that. And the reason why often they're not is because there aren't, the infrastructure isn't in place to put everyone on a level playing field, right? So a big part of what we do is shine a light on untapped potential, whether or not despite the fact that they might be underrepresented or neurodiverse, or, and I'm stereotyping here, but your introverted remote working engineer, like that person doesn't have nearly as much access to the key decision makers within organizations, yet arguably has probably the most sought after skill set, and therefore has the highest likelihood of being overlooked and therefore being dissatisfied and wanting to move somewhere else, right? And so when it comes to, I guess, my own journey of, trying to be seen and this sort of thing, like sometimes it can be really hard to relate to the problem if you don't empathize with the feeling yourself, if you haven't come from that lived experience. And you look at the profile of a typical investor, I mean, it's not someone that looks like me, basically. And I know this is a podcast, but I'm a female. I have an Asian background. I came here from, my parents migrated over here. They divorced. I'm an only child. I grew up with no money. My parents weren't around, and I was raised by my grandmother, who just passed away and doesn't speak English. And so you can imagine, the challenges that I've come up against that, the typical profile of an investor, let's just call them a white middle-aged man, has no idea what
Sounds
that
right.
experience is like. And so it's really hard for them to empathize that the problem is even there, right? That it
Yeah.
even exists outside of what the reports are telling them. And they've, got this social pressure to be more accommodating. No, this is, to be fair, I'm being a little bit bitter, but I do find that challenging at times, because although quite a lot of investors say that they support underrepresented founders, or they're really trying to be conscious about improving their portfolio when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, I think the intent is there, but the action is not coming through to what I'm, in terms of what I'm seeing.
How much of it do you think is the systems that we've had for so long are just, I mean, like this. I mean, the systems in terms of they're still being there and therefore influencing the processes by which we do things, but then also the systems being there and influencing the people within the system, right? I
Yeah.
mean, like you said, I don't think, I mean, I am positive, almost positive, that when I, listen to someone from XVC up on stage and they're saying, please, like, bring us more, like, we want deal flow, we want to be speaking to female founders or founders of color every single day, I like fully believe them. And yet, and I sense no malice or no sort of schadenfreude or anything like that from them. And yet something is just, it's what I mean. Like, something is just not not clicking. I don't actually know what the data suggests over, say, the last 5 to 10 years. I don't know whether, since this has become something people are really focusing on, there has been a massive uptick, but the way that it's being spoken about and the fact that, what is it, like 2% of all,
Yeah.
like 2% of all funding goes to female founders?
I think.
It's hit 3.
Yeah, I think it's hit 3 now.
Problem solved. We can leave this one now. It's all good. We're all sweet. So, where do you? So, rather than like, I'm really curious. So, I agree. Like, I think there is a problem, and there's like some form of bottleneck that like is stopping, like, there's a lot of goodwill coming through, and so I'm assuming that there's a lot of like, like I'm assuming at this point in time, like, for instance, you don't have any, like, you're getting a lot of meetings for this, and you're probably getting a lot of like constructive feedback in terms of your business model and stuff like that too. Like, I think it's really important to note that, like, not a lot of companies get funded, and it's really hard to do so. And if you're getting valuable feedback as well, that is valuable. But there's something kind of stopping the breakthrough from happening. And it's like, what I'm hearing from you is that feels quite structural, but the structure of that is playing out through the people that are like making those decisions, almost through like, I don't want to say no fault of their own from a way of sort of like absolving them, but I also want to acknowledge that I'm pretty sure everyone is trying to solve this problem,
Yeah. The way that I see it is, investors absolutely want to support, backing more underrepresented founders, but that's not unconditional, right? And so, like, for instance, one of the key challenges that I'm always coming up against is, we love you, we love your business model, we love this or that or whatever it might be, but HR tech, we think it's a crowded market, and therefore, because of that, we choose not to invest at this time. And so, and I can absolutely see it from their point of view, but there are a number of conditions set on who they back, which is necessary for them because they are capitalists, right? It's the nature of
Don't even get me
their
started,
work.
Nikki.
And so, yeah, I mean, can you really hold it against them, given that they are venture capitalists?
I mean, I can and I will at different points in time. Don't you worry about that. Let's take this as an opportunity to this whole idea of getting into those meetings. It's HR tech, crowded market, choose not to invest. Tell us about SeenCulture. What do you do? And tell me why it's the best HR tech on the market.
At SeenCulture, what we do is respond to the quote, talent is evenly distributed, opportunity is not. We see that as a real problem and as a huge factor in why employees are choosing to voluntarily resign from their jobs. And a lot of that is acknowledgement of their capabilities and their potential at work. And so, we shine a light on that through our platform. And we do that through combining data science with behavior science, or in particular, positive psychology, to really hone in on the key things that matters most. But, coming back to the premise of SeenCulture, right? Like, we all have this innate desire and need to feel seen. And so the ways in which our platform or our product is different from other things that are out there on the market. So take, like Myers-Briggs as an example, or disc profiling and that. Because, in fairness, we do something similar in terms of profiling. But actually, a lot of what those existing profilers do is give you feedback based on surveys you've responded to about yourself. It's one data point on what you think of yourself, and it doesn't lend to how you're seen by others or how you're recognized by others. And so what we do is we effectively have a platform that enables us to crowdsource what are those different perspectives and key insights that we can benefit from and leverage to help aid our decision making when we do need to recognize talent in the workplace, right? And so, if you're an employee, we'll make sure that we get the perspective of your manager, your peers, your direct reports, any other key stakeholders that you work with, and ask, what are Mike's strengths? What should he be recognized and seen for? And all of that data that we have for every employee in the organization then gets aggregated in such a way that enables us to have this huge database of how everyone's seen. And therefore, everyone's also votes for the things that they should have the opportunity to be recognized for, should there be something that comes up at work, whether it's a promotion or, an opportunity to move into a new team or whatever it might be. And so that's how we're really leveling the playing field with our analytics. So I guess the way that I like to think about it, so there's two analogies that I'll use. We apply the Moneyball philosophy to teams in organizations. And so if you're not familiar with the book or the movie, it's a movie, you might have seen it. It's got Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill in it, and it's a movie about baseball. But it's based off a book that's called Moneyball, The Art of Winning an Unfair Game. And what a lot of people don't realize is that it's actually all about bias. And if you have processes that mitigate that, for instance, looking at the data and doing things like data analysis or player analysis in Jonah Hill's role, to identify players that have been overlooked and undervalued, then you've got an unfair advantage over everyone else to identify key talent that has been overlooked by everyone else. in such a way that enables you to pull together a high performing team. And of course, this is measured against our collective intelligence framework that I've developed in accordance with the key factors that I mentioned earlier of what makes someone successful. And that is, they're essentially the ingredients to create not only a high performing individual or team, but a high performing business overall.
That sounds fantastic. I mean, one, you are expertly qualified to be coming up with a framework for something like this, which is great. And then two, I mean, it's definitely different. It's definitely different to take in the perspectives of your team around you, your boss, your colleagues, maybe even your direct reports, in terms of coming up with the character profile of the individual at work. I mean, it's definitely I've never heard of anyone doing it that way before. I actually just did my Enneagram again a couple of days ago, which is really interesting. Turns out I'm completely different to what I was 10 years ago. Who would have thought? But that is a radically different way of thinking. I mean, at least I don't know what is available in the sort of the corporate sphere at the moment, but I don't think there's a sort of call it a personality test like that. So, I mean, I would have thought there's some value in having a different angle there. Anyway, I suppose your goal now is to get the MVP out and actually, I mean, and this is definitely true of the Australian tech / just generally investment scene. I mean, very kind of risk averse as opposed to different markets around the world, and also very not the greatest time to be looking to invest. I mean, if you're looking to, not the greatest time to be looking to raise money. I mean, if you're getting into rooms at the moment and getting good feedback and sort of, it's a tough market out there. And so hopefully with this MVP coming out soon, you'll be able to get that into a few different organizations, prove that it works. And then, I mean, ideally what you want is investors knocking down your door, right? Like coming and saying we want to lead you around. Come on, let's go. Like Airtree's like banging on the door, walk outside, like San Francisco, Sequoia's kind of being like, guys, I don't even know if Sequoia do seed anymore. I can't remember, but it's I mean, hopefully, that's got to be the plan, right? With the MVP, tell me about you kind of where are you going? What's the next 6 months look like in Nikki's journey?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely getting more eyeballs onto the product and using it properly, so that we can obviously get more of that. Get more of that validation. Store up more of those proof points that are really just that you just cannot object against, right? And the beauty of it is, it's so innately governed by our human need to feel seen. This idea, imagine if everyone in your work or someone, or just even someone at your work was like, oh, I got this report and I realized how I was seen by all of the most important people in my life. Isn't that not something that you'd be really interested in knowing? Because all of the existing profilers that are out there, they're just spitting back to you what you've put in response to their questions. And of course you respond and you're like, oh my God, they've done this so well. It's so accurate. And it's like, yeah, that's because you're the one that answered the questions about yourself. And so I think this really highlights what that blind spot is for those people that are willing to, have a look at what that might be. But who doesn't want to know what other people, think of them, when the focus is on how they think of them in terms of their strengths, right? We're all about promoting each other, and that's all we care about. How can we lift each other up and create a culture where everyone feels seen?
For sure. I mean, let me know when you come out with a B2C version that I can send to all my friends and family, be like, hey guys, let me know. I mean, definitely the positive side of it is good too. So what does the world look like in 10 years time when this works? We're going to say when it works, not if. What does the world look like in 10 years time when you have sort of achieved your goal and your vision has come to life?
Yeah. In 10 years, it's going to mean right? Because at the moment, the focus is on employees being seen. Moving forward, it's going to be startups or ventures feeling seen, those ones that have been undervalued unfairly, right? Then it's going to be professions, communities that haven't been seen, that have been undervalued, teachers, for instance. Like, we're talking big. And moving forward after that, countries, how can we make sure we level the playing field in terms of how other underprivileged countries can get the same access to things? Like, I'm full of big ambitions, and so, you know, in 10 years we want a world where everyone feels seen, such that they have they're completely intrinsically motivated in what they do, whether it's in life, in work, you know. And it comes back to those three things that I'm trying to promote: connection, autonomy, and growth. That's what the world will look like.
Wow. Well done. Well done bringing it all the way back to the start with a bow tie on it. I mean, this would be the perfect place to end the podcast, but I don't think I can yet because you've just opened a can of worms for me. So, like, leveling the playing field with countries. I mean, whoa, I just literally fell into my microphone. Leveling the playing field with countries, like, I am here for it. I am 100% here for it. However, I am also a I guess I'm going to play devil's advocate because I just want to hear what you're going to say with your unbridled optimism. There is like thousands of years of geopolitical like sort of tension there, and I'm all for. I mean, my whole thing is like, let's build a new civilization apart from this one, and like have everyone flock to it because it's so much better than the current one. So I'm well with you on this. But how do you intend to level the playing field on a national, like international, global level? Like just like that's paint. Like I need to understand what that looks like in 20 years time when you're successful.
Yeah. It's a good question. And I guess our key or universal like mode of communicating or collecting data in terms of, you know, what people's strengths are, let's just say, for instance, is it exists already, right? It's just a matter of making sure that everyone's got access to the internet, for instance. It's more in how it's systematized and how we, you know, collect all of this data, no matter where someone is, right? Which I like over time will be much better at in terms of being able to obtain and capture that in a lot more of a, I don't know, accelerated way. But the idea is like it comes back to that quote: talent is evenly distributed, opportunity is not. It's just a matter of getting that data to know what talent exists in all of these places in different countries around the world. And as long as we have a universal platform to gather that talent data, then I don't see why it can't happen.
Yeah. Okay. Fully. I see the granular idea that the filters through to the national level is that if talent is evenly distributed and there are, you know, like multiple brilliant people in the provinces of the Philippines who are never going to be able to fulfill their potential because they just don't operate in an environment where the opportunity is going to get to them, how do we create a playing field that is a flat football pitch rather than like this crazy terrain where they're kind of stuck in the valley and can't get out either side to the shining light, or, you know, some other really weird metaphor that I will just make up like that kind of made sense. But anyway, so okay, cool, I've got you. And so then from that, being able to come back to those intrinsic motivators and allow people to, I guess, not only be seen and therefore be able to self-actualize, like, you know, be seen by the system in order to self-actualize their potential, which will then give them the satisfaction of having, well, self-actualized and therefore fulfilled their intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, but not just at the individual level, right? Because when you're there, like, then you're in a headspace that is all about how can I create value and make the most of this life, right? Because when you're self-actualizing, you're looking for new innovative ways to be creative and problem solve the biggest things that we have, that we're challenged by in the world, and we're able to be so much more inventive with what we can do because we've got that space to be able to play to our strengths and leverage relationships and grow in such a way that means that we're maintaining our autonomy. Like, it's all about what it means to have it at an individual level, what impact that has then on the world around us.
Roger, gotcha. Okay, sweet. And that actually tails nicely into my final question, which is about the journey, because it is very much the journey of how we are able to reach a level where we can, I guess, enjoy our lives and pursue creative outlets in a way like you just described. And Unmapped is all about the journey. So I have to ask at the end of every single interview, what does the word journey mean to you?
To me, it means all of the things that served, all of the things in terms of the ups, the downs, the struggles, the things that have really aided in character development and resilience of someone. Like, that's the journey. It's not like, it's like where the learnings happen, where the failure happens, where the agility happens. That's what I see as the journey.
Well put. The journey is where you build your character, is what I heard.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the show, Nikki. I have profoundly enjoyed this chat. It's been so nice to speak to someone who comes from a positive, like even just a kind of psychology and performance perspective into the startup world. It is, and being the founder of an organization. So I really appreciate that. And I wish you all of the best with your MVP launch of SeenCulture. I am praying, and I know that it will happen, that you will end up having it everywhere, in once the startup world to start with, and then in the corporate world, and then the VCs are going to be knocking on your door, and everything is going to be just fine. It is all going to work out, and we're all going to be happy days. So it is an absolute, well, it's been a privilege and an honor to have you on the show and have a little bit of a yarn with you. So thank you for giving me your time. Thank you for being candid and authentic with how you've been doing and the realities of what, building a startup is like. I actually thought we were going to come in and it was going to be totally different, because you've been doing so well. It just looks like, yeah, everything's great. Actually, it's never just great in startup world, is it? And so I appreciate your authenticity. It means a lot, because that is an important part of when we talk about our journeys, to be able to be honest and open. And for people listening, it helps that they get to hear the real kind of trials and tribulations, but also happinesses and successes of other people who are on similar journeys to them. So I really appreciate that. And it has been, as I said, an honor. Thanks for coming on the show, Nikki.
Thanks so much for having me, Mike. I've absolutely loved it too.
Thank you so much for tuning into another installment of Unmapped. I really, really hope you enjoyed the episode. I always have a blast creating them, and it brings me so much joy to share them with you. As I said at the start, I'd really appreciate if you share, follow, and review the show if it feels right for you. I'd also like to thank my great mate Josh Ryan for the magic he makes in post-production. my studio partner, Bondi Radio, and Arman at Moral Studios for the brand's design. I honestly could not do this by myself, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Until next time, I'm Mike Kelly, and this has been Unmapped.